Welcome everyone to the March 1st, 2023 meeting of the Riders Advisory Council. I call this meeting to order. John, may you please call the roll?
Sure. Brian Meyer.
Present.
Mahalia Fernando.
Present.
Cole Stout.
Present.
Oh, all right. I didn't see it there. Daryl Brewer. Jose Del Cid.
Present.
Mike Leibowitz.
Present.
Pat Sheehan. Don't see him yet. Emma Wormser. Okay. So you have a quorum.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I move that we approve the agenda for this meeting as presented and communicated with you all and posted on our website. Is there a second?
Second, Jose.
There's a second from Jose. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Okay, the agenda is approved as presented. We are going to transition into public comment, but before we do that, I just want to let you all know that this agenda is very full and very comprehensive, as we have, I know, 3 distinct agenda items, and around that, hopefully we can create a very fruitful discussion, not only just between us and staff, but actually be able to present some substantive recommendations where it's warranted to the board of directors at their next meeting later this month. But in the meantime, we will start with public comment, being a kind of a public body. So John, are there any comments that were pre-submitted for this particular meeting?
No.
Okay. And are there any members of the public joining us on this presentation? If so, you can use the raise your hand function to be able to speak.
I don't see any new names, so.
Neither do I. Hey Pat, how are you? Sorry, I just saw you. Okay, perfect. Well, we will transition to our first agenda item, which is going to be our Q2 Metro Performance Report and Dashboard. I know this is a presentation to, well, expand beyond what we talked about last year, the Q1 report. We now have Q2 results, and that is going to be Jordan, the director of performance, that is going to be able to talk to us. So welcome, and thank you so much for coming to speak to us. And I know John and Jose will set up the slide deck as well.
Thanks. I can share. Can I share my screen? I can do it.
Yes, your slides are probably more up to date or more tailored than what I have.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so I thank you for having me, first of all, or having me back as well. And I'm joined today, you can see her on the screen, my colleague, Andrea Burnside. She's the Vice President of Performance Data and Research. Also here listening in is another colleague, Laura Moini, who is the manager who puts together the performance report and the lead on the second item that I wanted to discuss with you, which was the dashboard that we're putting together to more visually display these performance results and allow customers to dig into the information kind of more relevant to their trip. Since I know it is a packed agenda, I was hoping that I could actually start with the dashboard first to get your feedback on, and then time permitting, we can go more in depth on the Q2 results. The Q2 results were presented to the full board in the meeting 3 weeks ago on February 9th. So there's kind of I'm happy to go into and answer questions on that as well. But just a note that that presentation has also available online, particularly for members of the public who want to listen to it. So let me share my screen and walk. So what I'm going to be showing you is a mock-up of what the customer dashboard will look like. So you see it's mocked up. You can probably see my screen right now. It's mocked up in PowerPoint. So this is not a fancy mock-up. But when I'm looking for kind of showing it to you all in this form so that we can make sure that we're on the right track and are kind of answering the questions and providing the information that is most relevant to our riders. So the purpose of this dashboard is, as you know, we have a suite of performance measures that we present to the public and the board. We publicize the report and present it to the board every quarter. Those measures are typically at the system level, right? So when we talk about on-time performance, we're talking about how the rail system performed, which is good for a board audience, good for accountability, but perhaps a little less relevant to the average, to our kind of customers who are more perhaps interested in, hey, how did the Green Line perform? Or how does the H4 perform? Or how does the 79 perform? Those kinds of things. So what we'd like to do is put together a dashboard with information that's updated more regularly that allows customers to explore more individualized performance data. And kind of the questions that we've been keeping in mind as we've been designing this dashboard are, hey, how do the trips I normally take, how do those perform? How does that performance compare to other trips or the system average? Hoping this is true. My trip has been getting better. Is that just my imagination? Hopefully it's not the opposite. But first wanted to open it up and see, are these kind of the questions that come to your mind that you would want to know about, or do you have any other feedback or things that we should be thinking of? I'll also note that our intent is to launch this dashboard in May, and that it'll be iterative. So we'll launch kind of the first phase in May, and then as we learn and get more feedback, we can add to it. But pause there to see if there's any initial feedback on these questions.
Hi, Jordan. I'll let I have one question, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the council. And so this is going to also have historical data kind of attached to it. So
yes,
past performance reports and kind of the metrics that you all measure are going to be uploaded into this. And so people are going to be able to see over the course of the past year what the performance has been like.
Yeah, maybe what might be good is to give you, I realize I started with the questions, but maybe you need a bit more than that. So yes, the thought is we would focus on a subset. It wouldn't include every single measure that's in the performance report. It'll include a subset. And so it'll include elevator and escalator availability, and kind of it will allow bus riders to look at bus, rail riders to look at rail. So for example, for bus, you'd be able to narrow it down to a route and a time, like a route and a direction. You'd be able to select a service period. So do I normally travel during AM, during the morning? Do I normally travel at late night, or kind of whatever period you're interested in? And then a time frame. And then you would, the measures that you would see are one, how much of that service for that route at that time period was delivered, how many of those trips were on time, and what share had real-time information available, and the accuracy of that real-time predictions. And you get these summary information, but then you'd also be able to see trends over time. So you could look at the last 12 months, you could look at the last 12 weeks. This would be hooked up or similar to the data that you had selected previously. So for bus and rail, it would be these initially 4 performance measures. So prediction, service, the share of our scheduled service that has been delivered, the on-time performance, as well as real-time prediction, availability, and accuracy. And for rail, you'd be able to choose a line. If you wanted to get very detailed and choose an origin and a destination station, you could, a service period, or a time frame. And I see I have some hands, so I'll maybe pause there, but I hope this kind of gave you a little more context to what to those initial questions that I put forth.
No, thank you so much. I saw Pat, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, sir. Good to hear your voice, Brian. I'm not able to see your dashboard being visually impaired. So just had a question. I think you might have just answered it though. So you have your key results. Do you also have your objectives or goals that you're trying to meet there?
The mock-up I'm showing doesn't have the targets, but that's a good point to compare it. I was thinking comparing to the target as well as perhaps like, if you're digging into a particular trip, how that compares to an average, a system average, but perhaps targets the better way.
And the reason I brought that up, I'm being a little bit selfish because I'm thinking from the Accessibility Advisory Committee and maybe from the RAC point of view, this kind of information is very useful as far as putting sort of a roadmap together about concerning what you want to look at, what's important to you, and where you should be. Where you should be, targets you should be achieving. And if you're not achieving those targets, which would be a RAC or AAC question, if not, why not? And then what can we do to help you achieve your targets, which is the more important question, I would think, from a RAC and an Accessibility Advisory Committee point of view. And then be able to work with you in certain ways to be able to help us achieve the targets. That's why I asked the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's music to my performance ears to hear you say that. So it makes perfect sense.
But yeah, so if we have the targets there, then we can help you achieve them. It would help drive our sense of priorities if that's the area that we want to work in. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Mahalia, sorry.
Yeah, hi. I had a question about the questions earlier and how they would be framed to the users. I guess, will they be able to see metrics side by side, those questions? I feel like open-ended questions, you might get fewer responses, or fewer people may want to actually sit down or can sit down and like take the time to answer those questions, versus if there were more specific aspects, like you mentioned earlier, escalators and elevators, or timeliness or cleanliness or whatever. I feel like the more specific and the more like I don't know if you wanted it as open-ended or like a rating system or a yes or no. I feel like you might get more responses than something open-ended is my feedback on it.
Thank you. I think I wasn't totally clear because that is true. Like we have a customer satisfaction survey that has more of those closed responses. These ones were more just like, these are the questions we had in mind when we were trying to create like the use questions people would have when they used the dashboard. So the dashboard would not actually be using these as survey questions. This is more just a like, why would I come and use this dashboard? I want to know about how my trips perform or how, but yes, I agree that for customer feedback, that's good feedback and well taken.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments about the customer dashboard?
Is this kind of, from your view, the types of things kind of as a Metro rider you would want to see? For elevators and escalators, we're thinking you can dig down to the station and look at elevators and escalators and see kind of the availability of the units at the stations that you typically use.
Jordan, I do have a question, and this is, unfortunately, it does not answer that question that you just asked, which is about the dashboard, in terms of its what it presents, in terms of functionality, and making sure that this is kind of widely used and accessible to customers. Is this going to be interfaced hopefully with the app, the SmartTrip app, or is this going to be just on our website, or how is this going to be utilized by the customers and the riders?
Great question. Initially, we're thinking just it'll be on our website, so on wamata.com. You see, it's been a little awkward for me to scroll, but the reason we have it in this layout is so it will be mobile friendly. It will be web-based, but the information will be displayed in a way that you can use your phone to look at it and choose things.
For the members of the RAC, are there any additional, and the great thing about a dashboard is that you can add and subtract to it depending on kind of the needs of customers and riders and where there's a desire for additional information. If there's any additional metrics that we think riders ought to have access to in this particular format, then I think now is a great opportunity for members of the RAC to speak up and articulate that. I know the only thing, and I know this is a very complex conversation that will spill over into our next one about public safety, because I know that there's a robust discussion at the board of directors meetings a couple months ago about, performance in public safety. That's kind of can be a different situation to handle. But yeah, so I'll just open it up if any other RAC members have any additional comments about that.
Maybe to spur some ideas, here are some that we had brainstormed as potential additions, kind of maybe trying to look at some reasons for late or missed trips. So you find out like, oh, my on-time performance for the trip I normally take is quite below target. Like what usually happens, is it on the rail side, has it been a series of, some slow zones for something like that? Or were there, more rail car breakdowns, those kinds of things? So trying to look at the reasons for late trips. And then these are some other measures that we could potentially include. So curious whether any of these seem more interesting than others.
Jose?
Yeah, thank you for sharing the phase 2 kind of questions. And it kind of also dawned on me, like maybe for like some of the larger events that people use our system for, like, 4th of July, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe like, I don't know how helpful that would be but like, I would just imagine like, oh, do I need to get in a car when, actually I can plan my trip out to the National Mall and then come back. Sometimes intuitive, sometimes not. And then I like the bus reliability, especially with the electrification of some of the buses that WMATA and other jurisdictions are doing. That's kind of helpful, just from it runs the same, but it's quieter in some ways, shape, or form. So it really just, I mean, I'm geeking out right now, but I think these are some good questions that you have.
I agree with that. Any additional comments? If not, oh, yep, sorry. Pat.
Thanks. Getting to the raise hand button is problematic sometimes. Did the data that you're showing here, is it just bus and rail, or does it go down to Metro Access?
Thanks for that.
Metro? Thanks.
Yeah, we will include Metro Access. What we're proposing for Metro Access are 3 slightly different measures. One is looking at how many trips were provided over the time frame that you choose. Another is looking at the on-time performance over that time frame. And the third that we thought could be interesting to Metro Access customers, so again, I'm looking for feedback, are the share of trips that were shared rides.
Were they shared rides? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are good. And I know that AC has invited you back for a couple of sessions between bus and rail and Metro Access. So my guess is that they may have some ideas.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's great.
Really, we can build dashboards all we want, but if they aren't useful or like don't tell the stories that other people want to hear, then it's kind of a pointless effort.
Right.
So really
Okay.
want to make sure that this is something that provides some, useful information for
Right.
folks. We
No,
want to be transparent about how we're doing, but part of it is making sure that information is presented in a way that
Mhm.
that
Good.
is useful.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're taking Metro Access into consideration as part of what you're measuring. That's good. Thanks.
And my last, the only question I have last is, do you think it would be useful to incorporate public safety performance measurements on this dashboard? Or do you think that there still needs to be some work to define the parameters for performance? Because I know, again, how we define what a safe or unsafe system is, or the degree to which it meets certain performance standards, that's still in flux, and it may not necessarily be right to put it in a dashboard as it's currently calculated. Or is that something that you all are growing closer towards being able to do? Or is that's a whole separate issue, you all think?
I know what we have now and what we are already putting on WMATA.com, but not in a kind of dashboard format, is the number and type of crimes that are occurring at our system and where they're occurring. Kind of the police part of WMATA.com has details, a lot of details about that. So that is something we could kind of put more in an interactive format. Sounds like that might not be quite what you had in mind, but that's what is available kind of currently that we could kind of put in a more graphical format.
Yeah, and I just know it's really difficult just because just some of the metrics that you use, it may be just not translate as well into kind of dashboard, graphics, as some of these other more quantitative measures are. But okay. If there are no other comments or questions, then Jordan, if you would like a very brief explanation of the Q2 performance, if you have that slide deck available. I know it's something that we all already have. If there's any substantive differences between the Q1 and the Q2 report that you think would be useful to cover in terms of changes, then I think that would really be the most important thing for our RAC members to see and hear and to question. Sure
thing. Yeah, I can kind of give you the high level summary and then and kind of show you the details, this kind of scorecard, and then you can, if you have specific questions, we can kind of go into that.
Perfect.
Okay, let me. Okay. So overall, kind of the key takeaways from Q2. So this is the Q2 report. The results that you'll see here are cumulative. And when I say Q2, you're like, but it's January or it's March. We're talking fiscal year. So Metro's fiscal year starts July 1. So the results here go from July 1 through December 31st. So that's the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year. And again, we kind of present the results cumulatively. So one of the key highlights, I think, is that customer satisfaction is improving. And I think that is a reflection of the steps taken to improve reliability and increase frequency. The other takeaway is that most measures did meet the targets we've set. And if they didn't, they are trending in the right direction. I'll call your attention to a few maybe exceptions to the small exceptions to that, but I think overall performance is moving in the right direction or has already achieved the targets we've set. Next, our system-wide ridership is above forecast for those first 6 months, and we are seeing trends in ridership where our rush hour is returning. Again, it's not at the levels it was before the pandemic, but we are seeing similar patterns in ridership where most of our ridership happens at the 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. hours. And then finally, we also heard that one way that we can continue to prove satisfaction and that a concern from our customers is focusing on customer and employee safety. And I know that you're getting more details about that. The board has been discussing this. We've been talking about the things that we're doing. So, some of the things we're doing are COPS, cameras, and compassion. And so this is the broad summary. This is a lot of information on one slide, but just to orient you, what you see here is kind of each row in these tables is a type of performance measure, and then we're evaluating how it did against target. And so here, blue means that we met our target or did better than our target. Light orange means we're approaching the target, but just missed it. Dark orange means we missed the target. And gray is that we did not set a target for FY23, often because this is a new measure for us, and so we don't have enough historical data to determine what that target would be. Our intention, though, is that these measures we would set targets for in the coming fiscal year. And then you see a second column where is this trending in the right direction? A check mark means good. Yes, we are. And no check means we aren't. So here, for example, customer satisfaction for bus, we were just shy of our target, but performance has been greatly increasing. I think we've increased 11 percentage points over a 12-month period, which is huge. So things are moving in the right direction. Ones where, as I mentioned before, where we're continuing to focus on are the ones at the bottom of the blue box over here, where it's our safety related measures, where we know that we need to pay attention to those and are taking action there. But generally, kind of things, as I mentioned, for most measures, we've either met target, or if we didn't meet target, performance is moving in the direction that we'd like to see over this, particularly over the second quarter. Is there any detail? Do you want me to dive a bit more into these ones in the blue box, or for time purposes? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine just because everyone here has this slide deck. I do just have one question. Obviously, it is something we all know, whether we've met or not met these targets are all based off of what we set the target as and those parameters. Yep. And that's probably a combination of WMATA specific information as well as kind of best practices and what other public transit systems are in the industry utilize. Are you confident that you're going to be able to turn all of those gray circles into some other color other than gray by the start of FY24 and have those kind of parameters in place?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So for many of the gray, you see like bus missed service is a gray one. That was one where we just we improved our methodology for measuring that over the past year. And so we didn't have kind of a historical data set to set that target. So next year we'll have enough data and we have some industry parameters, so we'll be able to set the target. The same is the case on the right-hand side where you see the gray for the bus prediction, accuracy, and availability. Those are ones where we really started had the data and started measuring it just at the beginning of this fiscal year. So wanted to make sure that we had enough to understand kind of what was in what was going to be a stretch, but what was still feasible. And the nice thing about those measures also is we've defined them in a way that we can benchmark ourselves against several other properties, particularly MBTA. Crowding is one where we will likely set a target. It's one of those, we have some targets for those measures in our service standards, so that can form a benchmark. This is one where ridership has been so fluctuating or unclear that we weren't quite sure what target to set for these, but that's something we're getting a bit more clarity on the patterns that we can aim for.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, it probably goes without saying that once those targets and parameters are set, that it makes it easier to incorporate into a dashboard later on.
Exactly.
Are there any other questions or concerns about the cumulative FY23 performance with Q2 factored in? Hearing none, thank you so much, the performance team. We greatly appreciate that. Oh, I'm sorry. Mahalia, did you have a question?
I did not. I got disconnected. Sorry. So my internet was really bad. So I just got back on again. Sorry about that.
No worries. Well, thank you so much for this performance update. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll be in touch about hopefully coming back to our next, or not our next REC meeting, but when the Q3 data comes in, and we're certainly looking forward to seeing the rollout of the dashboard to help serve the customers a little bit better. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all your feedback. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. John, we'll transition to our next part of the agenda, which is going to be a public safety update. And do we have Chief Inzalo?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes.
Welcome. I will hand over the meeting to you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Kind of after hours and being able to make time to talk to us about public safety in the system.
Oh, certainly. No, thanks for having us. I've got Assistant Chief Nader here with me, so we'll kind of split the presentation just to give you some statistics of where we're at from
Chief,
January.
I apologize for interrupting. I have your slides that you presented to the board. I want to say it was the end of January. If you'd like me to bring those up at any time, let me know.
Okay.
I'll get out of your way now.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we've got some current statistics kind of where we're at to date on crime. So our crime is up this year at this time compared to last year at this time. Some good news is we are down in aggravated assaults. So far this year, we've seen about a 15% decrease. Robberies, we've seen an uptick in robberies. We had 66 to date versus 31 at this year, last year. The biggest driver of our crime this year is stolen autos. We're getting Hondas and Kias stolen from our lots, particularly in Prince George's County and in the district. I think there's also there's a YouTube video going around that I think's been on the news. The Kias, a lot of them, and the Hondas don't have the push button starts. They have the old key starts. And so the reason why stolen autos went down in the region over the last 10 years or so was because manufacturers went to the push button starts. If you have the old key starts, it's easy to crack the steering column and start the car with a screwdriver and take off. Unfortunately, a lot of the Hondas and Kias have the key starts, and we've seen a significant increase. So far this year to date, we have 78 stolen cars versus 2 at this time last year. And our damage to property and theft from auto is up significantly too. 27 this year versus 6 at this time last year. So we've seen a significant increase in auto theft for lots. We are doing some education campaigns along with the local jurisdictions as well. This afternoon we were Branch Avenue Metro handing out clubs to customers that parked on the lots so they could secure their automobiles, particularly the Kias and Hondas. And we're trying to do regionally more of a public education campaign. Manufacturers are actually looking at the problem too, but that's going to take a little bit of time to address. Some other statistics from last year where we've seen an increase since the pandemic in involuntary committals. These are people that are in mental health crisis. In 2019, we had 65. And then in 2020, we were up to 82. 2021 was 110. And then 2022, 106 involuntary committals. And these are individuals that are in mental health crisis that are a danger to themselves or others. We have to take them, to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. They're basically taken into custody and, remanded there until psychiatrists or the courts deem them, fit to leave the hospital. So that's a trend that we're continuing to see into last year. Some other statistics, though, our arrests are up very high this year compared to last year at this time. Last year at this time, we were looking at 178 arrests. It's kind of gone up tremendously to 336 this time, or for this year. Our citations are up as well, particularly with fare evasion. Since we started the fare evasion enforcement in Maryland, DC, and Virginia in November, we've issued 231 citations, 82 in Virginia, 25 in DC, 124 in Maryland. And we've also, with the general manager, Mr. Dwyer, and the Metro team, we've done a pretty extensive public, campaign about people have to pay their fares and that sort of thing. And we're trying to, juveniles, we treat them a little bit differently, particularly because the kids ride free. We counsel them and try to get the name of the school so that at least they can get a kids ride free pass from their schools with it. But the adults, a lot of them, since we do it in mass, you'll see several officers at the fare gates. A lot of people turn away if they don't pay their fare. We've probably diverted over 3,000 people from entering the system because they weren't paying their fares. Another update, and I'll let Chief Nader here talk in a second about some of our programs. So we did enter into an agreement with the district Department of Behavioral Health, and we did get Narcan for all of our officers. They've been trained, and just about all of them now have Narcan in their possession. So far, we've used it about 10 times on folks that were suffering from some sort of overdose situation, and they've been successful. People were actually taken to the hospital and got treatment. They didn't die on the scene like we've seen before. The other thing too is we've hired, since general manager came in, we've hired 4 crisis intervention clinicians. These folks were selected by our Community Services Bureau director, along with DC was very gracious in that they gave us members from the Department of Behavioral Health to sit on the hiring board. So we were able to select, candidates that had a background in social work and behavioral health problems, as well as opioid and drug abuse. Since they've been in existence and working over the last several months, made over 250 contacts with individuals that were either experiencing homelessness, mental health problems, or drug addiction. And basically what they do is these clinicians connect them to services, either, if they're in DC, they connect them to DC services. Maryland and Virginia is a little bit different. They have more of a patchwork of non-government organizations as well as government organizations that were able to connect some of these folks to services. And we do follow up as well. Our main goal with this is, one, to address the current situation with the help of these government organizations and non-government organizations and get some of these folks the help they need. And, our success is if, we don't see them back in the system in the same shape that they were in when we first encountered them. So and we're slated to, the program's going pretty well. We're slated now, we're probably going to hire at least 6 more crisis intervention specialists. That'll give us the flexibility to work not only the day shift, the evening shift, and the midnight shift to help address some of the issues that we have for people that are in crisis. And then, George, I'll turn it over to you for the high visibility.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. George Nader, I'm the Assistant Chief with the Metro Transit Police Department. Thank you for having us at the meeting. Some of the other things that we've done with the GM support, Mr. Clark, is to be able to get additional officers out. So we increase our patrol between 30 to 60% based on the given day. And what that is a high visibility detail. So what our goal is with that is to put our officers out there, put them in positions to interact with our customers and really show police presence. And the goal is on trains and on buses and on our platforms. So as they're patrolling, we ask them to go through the trains, interact, and that could be addressing disorder, that could be giving directions, that could be just giving greetings to the customers. Because what we want to do is part of the GM's initiative is just enhance the customer experience when they're on the train or bus. So we're all in on that. So these officers are going out at designated times, and they're going at different locations all throughout the system. So hopefully you're seeing them out there. Some of the other campaigns we're doing is the reimbursable overtime, which is if you've kept up with law enforcement in recent trends, you know that across the nation we're experiencing staffing shortages. Here at the Metro Transit Police is no different than our partners. So what the general manager has allowed us to do is work with our partner jurisdictions and have them come in and provide supplemental patrols at some of our stations. So we've entered into these agreements with Metropolitan Police Department. We have Greenbelt Police Department. We have Washington Airport Authority. We also have just signed Chevrolet, so they'll be coming up online. And we're in the works of doing this with a few of our other jurisdictional partners. So we look forward to bringing them into our particular stations to provide that added presence for us. In addition to that, one of the things that the general manager has also allowed us to do and supported is to bring in special police officers at various stations. Now, this is a new program, so it's coming in phases. Right now, we have special police officers at Potomac Avenue. We have special police officers at Stadium, and this is during revenue hours. The next stations that we're coming in is going to be Benning Road and Foggy Bottom. So as they come in, we're trying to do 2 at a time with the goal of getting to 25 stations that'll have special police officers at them. And this is in addition to the high visibility details and in addition to the reimbursable overtime that we're doing with our partner jurisdictions. Right now, we have about 80 position vacancies within the Metro Transit Police Department. So if you know anybody, we're definitely hiring. We love to get some good people on board. I think it's a great organization, and we're going to ramp up our recruiting here lately. But if you have anybody, you can refer them to Metro Jobs. We're definitely looking for people. A little plug for that. And I'll transition into one of the other things that we're doing. So I think the chief touched on it. We're really enhancing our community relations at the Transit Police. Our community operations team has done a lot of great things. If you kept up with a couple things that they did. So during Halloween, our partners from Bus gave us decorated it at Halloween. We went out to different stations. We had the kids come through. They were actually able to trick or treat on the bus. We gave them gifts. And then we did the same thing at Christmas. Unbelievable. I wish we could have really invited more people out to see this. When the kids come through, we had the Grinch there, we had Santa Claus there, and they transformed this bus into a winter wonderland. And what I'm saying is this has really is contagious. So now we got partners from Bus and Rail coming and participating in these events with us. So it's just really showing how much WMATA cares about the community and how much we try to give back. In addition to that, we did some some events where we fed people at our different stations. We went to different shelters and fed the unsheltered. We did that at 3 different locations, feeding about 600 people. So there's these kind of initiatives that are really bringing us more closer in touch with our riders and helping us share that customer experience and hopefully enhance and just showing the dedication to service that this organization truly has. So one of the other things that kind of pairs with that is starting in June, or I think July, we're going to have a Citizens Police Academy. So that will be open, and we'll make sure we get that information out to this group in particular. It'll be open to any community members. It'll be open to WMATA employees. And basically what it's going to be is a glimpse into what it means to be not only a police officer, but a Metro Transit police officer. So what we're going to really try to show is the training that we take to prepare our officers to go out and police in a manner that is reflective of the GM's vision and WMATA's vision and the chief's vision. So it really is a glimpse into how we prepare our officers. We'll answer all the questions that people ever had about policing, even put our participants in scenarios. We have a simulator, it's like a big video game, but we can put you in a police scenario that fluctuates depending on how you respond. So these are some of the modern tools that we have to enhance our training. And just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what our training looks like, and we believe we've been modern and we believe we've been ahead of the times prior to a lot of the things that have occurred in recent history with policing. In 2021, we became a ABLE agency, and ABLE is a acronym for Active Bystanders in Law Enforcement. It's out of a law group in Georgetown. And basically what it is when we tell officers, hey, we want you to intervene when you see an officer doing something. We want you to stop that officer. But what we realize in our profession is we say this, but we never train the officer, 1, how to intervene on another officer. And then 2, we never train the officer how to receive the intervention. So this takes care of that. It's a one-time 8-hour class, but then it's a yearly class that comes back. So every year in service, there's a refresher on this. And it's something that we had to do a lot of things to be recognized as an ABLE organization, but we were able to do that. Another training that couples right up to that, the chief talked to you a little bit about the enhanced mental health persons in crisis that we're seeing. So last year we did a program, it's a national program, it's called Mental Health First Aid for Law Enforcement. And what that does is that helps the officers recognize when they're dealing with somebody in crisis. And that can be mental in crisis, that can be drug-induced in crisis, whatever that crisis is. And it helps the officers recognize, but it also prepares them to better communicate with a person that's in crisis, regardless of what the nexus of that crisis is. So in combination with the officers that we hired, the clinicians, this is another step to prepare our officers and make sure that we're prepared to deal with our community in a professional manner, all with the goal of de-escalation. So we don't want it to escalate. We want to teach our officers how to de-escalate and some of those techniques that work based on what we're being dealt with. One of the other things we did, the cultural awareness training that was at the African American Museum. We've had our officers do training on implicit bias. We've had communicating with youth courses for our officers. And when I say for our officers, I mean the entire department goes through these trainings. So this is how we think that we're keeping up and preparing our officers to go out here and represent this organization and serve our communities in a professional manner that we expect of them and that we hold them accountable to.
Yeah, one of the other programs we're starting, we got a grant from the Department of Justice for $900,000 last year to implement a body-worn camera program. So we have purchased those cameras. We've gone through Axon. We purchased 455. Our policy was approved by the Department of Justice. That is in effect. We're training to it. We're starting to equip and train our officers at the end of March. We plan on rolling them out to all the officers. The plan is to have them fully deployed come June 30th.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll talk about, Chief, is we are also a part of WMATA Suicide Prevention Committee. Some of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that we have proper signage up, and we're looking at persons and doing, unique things to try to identify somebody that's in crisis that may be thinking about doing something to harm themselves. And we're trying to give them resources, to reach out to someone for assistance, either through our clinicians or through the National Crisis Hotline, or even just someone spotting someone that's portraying, these signs that they can maybe pick up on, and alerting our officers to come out there and try to offer them a lot of assistance. We had an incident just recently where officers were able to successfully get somebody down off of I guess it was an awning, who was threatening to harm themselves. So we are seeing some success with the training that we've implemented, with the goal of helping the people that are in our community. So, and that's all I have, Chief, unless anybody has any questions in particular for me.
Yeah, just one other thing on enforcement. So one of the things that we'd have here is we have a good cadre of detectives. So when you look at offenses, clearance rates, when you compare our clearance rates here at Metro Transit Police to national averages based on uniform crime reporting. So for last year, if you look at national average for clearance rates for aggravated assault were 52%. Our detectives cleared 64%. Rape was 32%. Our detectives closed 67%. Robbery was 30%. Our detectives closed 46%. Arson was 23%. Our detectives closed 83% of the arson cases. Auto theft was 13%, and our detectives closed 21%. Burglaries on here as well, but we didn't have any burglaries last year, so we had nothing to report out on that clearance rate. But overall, and that helps too with, I think the message that the general manager and we're trying to send is, if you do commit a crime on Metro, we have video, we have a cadre of detectives, and you're going to get caught if you do something. So we will get a warrant for you, and we will come arrest you. So if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them.
So first, I'd just like to thank you very much. I think that was very comprehensive, not only presenting kind of the quantitative state of the work that you all are doing and what's currently happening in the system, but also a programmatic overview guided towards, prevention efforts and addressing current problems with the system, but also kind of focusing on that 3C model that I know that you all are trying to focus on with cops, cameras, and community relations and engagement. So thank you very much for that. And also, I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing and being proactive and transparent about this. I know that our metro system is just a reflection of what's happening in society, and that it's spilling over into our system. And not to say that it's inevitable, but that's the way it works, and that's life. So utilizing some of these programs that you talked about, prevention efforts in certain policies and procedures to try to lower some of the crime that's happening is essential. And I think that there may be some comments or questions from members of the RAC concerning some of the stuff that you said. And so I will open it up to the floor for anyone that has any questions or concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions?
Hey, Brian, this is Brian Dwyer. I apologize. I'm not at my computer because I'm meeting some staff in the field. Could I just add 2 issues?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, so really quickly, Chief Nader, thanks for the great presentation. One thing that the chief's talked about as far as a force multiplier, whether it's our other area police partners or private security, we're really looking to kind of double our efforts in bus operations, because we have gotten feedback from both our operators and from our bus riders about seeing more police out there. And that's something that Chief started the the bus team up again in September, but we're looking to kind of reallocate some of what we have in place to really focus as much on bus as we are on rail as much as we can. And the second thing is just, we'll have events coming up like Cherry Blossoms, like Nats games that, some of the survey data that our comms team has put together really shows us that, some of the security issues that people perceive or some of the disabled trains and kind of events we have really turn off those occasional riders. So we're also really going to be redoubling our efforts around those events because those are riders we want to get back, and that goodwill that those riders might feel, we're hoping will add to our ridership. And as you all are well aware, ridership is well on its way back up. So just wanted to add those two things. I appreciate it.
Most definitely. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Of course, sir.
Coming to our meetings. I just have a few questions. So, and this is just for clarification, with the uptick in kind of auto theft, so that's individuals who are parking, like riders who are parking in Metro Rail parking lots and then going onto the system, their cars are being stolen.
Yeah. Yes.
And occasionally it's people that use parking lots for overnight parking, which we don't recommend, but the vast majority is patrons that are actually using the system.
Okay.
And the vast majority of those cars being stolen at a very high percentage are what the chief said, the Hyundais and the Kias.
That's interesting.
And we're seeing it all. Like if you look at Largo Town Center, so you look at the hospital over there, they've seen a significant increase in auto theft from the hospital parking lots. So they're not just targeting Metro lots. This is an ongoing, they're targeting parking structures, so that's what we're saying. There's not like one group or two groups that are doing this, and we're recovering these cars fairly quickly. So that tends to let you know that they're usually juveniles or young adults that are doing this, because the ones that go overseas, you don't recover those. That's more indicative of an auto theft ring that's operating in the area. These cars are being used in other crimes and being dumped, or they're stealing a car from Branch Avenue and they're riding into the district or another location, dumping the car because they needed transportation. And that's what we're saying.
And is there, I guess, maybe in the status quo or in the future, an emphasis on camera coverage for those outside kind of structures or lots? I don't know. I usually in the metro and don't really pay attention too much to kind of the parking lot system that we have within the system, admittedly.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, we would definitely have to discuss because obviously it'd be a budgetary type item. I think the focus has been with Metro outside of these stolen auto, what we classify as parking lot crimes. Our emphasis is really with the camera coverages and the train cars and the system and on the buses, because that's generally where our violent crime, occurs as opposed to the parking lots. But yeah, in a perfect world, I'd love to have a budget for the garages and parking lots. But it's, it's something we definitely have to talk with, obviously our budget folks and the board members about.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is, absent the recent spike due to this Hyundai Kia challenge, our parking lots have been much better than what our partners areas have as far as theft from auto and auto theft. I think the region is experiencing, and probably the nation, an increase solely based off this Kia and Hyundai challenge.
Sounds good. I will open up the floor for any questions. I know, Mike, I know you're traveling, so if you're not in a position to ask a question, I completely understand. I just know that the annual report committee has done a lot of work with in getting feedback from the public about the public safety. So, Mike, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Waiting for my camera to show up on here. Sorry. So I was just traveling from Charlottesville, so I just got back. I apologize. Thank you, Chief, and everybody else. You answered a lot of my questions, which was really helpful. And I am in a military uniform, but anything I say on my comments are all my own and not from the U.S. government or the United States military. Put that out there. I didn't have time to change. So as Brian mentioned, we have a committee where we engaged with over 100 riders to kind of get their insight into what their top 3 concerns are with the metro system, including metro access, the buses, and the trains. And so we've got a lot of interesting comments and statistics that the RAC gathered. And just our statistics was, at least from the over 100 we had, calculated about 24% said one of their top 3 concerns was safety. And then there were sort of some subsets that riders had mentioned. And a lot of this you had already discussed with us. So fare evasion, 39% had said that was one of their top concerns for various reasons. And one of them, which was actually surprising to me, and I think to other members of the RAC, that 27% said one of their top 3 concerns was what anecdotally at least people say is a higher uptick in smoke and marijuana and other invasive customer behavior on the buses, on the trains, and in the stations. And many of the riders that I spoke to personally had said that it seems like an issue that's really big concern to them for many reasons, health and just their comfort, and they feel like it's not being addressed. So I just wanted to ask you, is there kind of an enforcement mechanism that is going on regarding specifically either the deterrence or to enforce the smoking rules in the trains, buses, and stations?
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So for smoking, we do issue citations, and we also kick people out of the station if we catch them smoking. The other thing, marijuana consumption, we do arrest people for that. Where we've made more of a focus when we started the fare enforcement campaign back in the fall. I know most people were caught up in the fare enforcement type issues, but really what we're looking at is all the public conduct type issues. So what we do is if we get a complaint, I tell you, the text tip line is extremely helpful to us. So if somebody texts, my MTPD and say there's somebody smoking on the train. So what we do is, if we have officers there or at the next station, we'll hold the train and look for the person that's actually smoking. If we find them, then obviously we'll write them a citation, pull them off the train, and kick them out of the metro. So we have refocused on some of these quality of life type crimes, if you will.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And kind of a follow-up to a lot of things that all of you have touched on, but kind of going along with this theme of kind of the specific concerns that riders had raised to the RAC, was it's almost like the old, they want a cop on every street corner kind of, for deterrence and things like that. So in this context, riders feel like they'd like to see police or officers on buses or on trains kind of going through the cars and more visible than I think what, at least reporting to us, that what some have seen. I know in my commute, I take, from Northern Virginia, from like Herndon, Reston area all the way to Federal Triangle and back every day. I don't see too many officers, at least in my commutes. Sometimes I do. So I guess the real question is, trying to gauge what the riders are getting at is, what resources do you, if you can say, do you need to, I know you're working on hiring things, but to get more officers on these buses and the trains that's more visible, I guess, beyond the core and kind of throughout the system at, various points in time?
Yeah, so we're 80 police officers short. We have an authorized strength of 466, for which we're budgeted for, and right now we're at 386 officers, and that count includes me and George too. So not sure how effective George and I are out there on the system, but we try to get out there from time to time. But with that said, so part of the plan that the general manager, Mr. Dwyer, and we've come up with getting these outside agencies to fill in some of these gaps in these stations allows us to push more Metro Transit police officers on the trains and on the buses. And you're right, primarily our high visibility has been primarily on the green line because that is our highest crime line, and then followed by the red line is what we've been focused on. But, you know, with the additional special police officers, the additional outside agencies, we'll be able to expand that to get more on bus and rail on the other lines as well.
Thank you. And do you have MOUs in place? Are those in development for specific actions, including, I guess I would say, Loudoun County and Fairfax, particularly because we have some of the new Silver Line stations that are out there? Just with that.
Yeah, so, you know, are you talking about MOUs just for policing, or are you talking about MOUs for the reimbursable detail?
I would say probably a little bit of both, sir. You know, where because there's a shortage. You said like 80 some police officers short. So if, you know, riders say in Virginia, in the newer stations, or even all the way through that, say we would really like, you know, to see more police, you know, just be around. So beyond, I guess, MOUs for details as well as just to kind of fill some of the gaps while you work on the hiring.
Yeah, so for, you know, to answer the first part of your question, so we do have MOUs with all the transit zone agencies. Those are your basic MOUs about prisoner processing, what to do with juveniles, you know, custody, that sort of thing, just basic police functions. And then what we've done with this reimbursable, we've created another MOU, and it's really just a payment mechanism to get, you know, folks out there. And I've sent it to Mike Chapman, Loudoun County Sheriff's, but, you know, that's a decision that he has to make, whether he wants to support that or not. I've also sent it to Kevin Davis, the Chief of Police of Fairfax. But again, he has to make that decision along with his board of supervisors if they want to participate in that that reimbursable MOU.
And would those apply to, and again, I don't want to dominate the conversation too much, so I have one more, then I'll be after this. Do you have, with these MOUs or anything at least being considered in Virginia, I'm looking at, because I know it sounds like you're working on some things in Maryland regarding the parking lots and the car thefts, so that, you know, if there's not enough of officers around to go to, say, like Ashburn or Herndon or something like that, that there could be, you know, whether town of Herndon or Loudoun County Police, kind of just at least driving through and working together through whatever investigations, or just kind of being there to hopefully deter some crime.
Yeah, so Loudoun, you know, the only thing that Loudoun actually controls the lots out there, Metro doesn't, so that's their jurisdiction. Fairfax, it's kind of a mixed bag, so is Herndon as well. Some of their lots, like if you look at Falls Church, Fairfax County actually patrols those lots where the city of Falls Church, it lies just outside of the Falls Church Police Department jurisdiction. So the whole jurisdiction, the transit zone and the various jurisdictions, it's pretty nuanced in a lot of ways. So we do, you know, actively work with those folks to, you know, try to get more folks out there on patrol. But by the same token, to be fair to all the jurisdictional agencies, we're all short. So, you know, DC's down about, you know, almost 800 officers. Fairfax is down. Prince George's is down. Montgomery's down. Alexander and Arlington, they're all down. We're all competing for the same pool of people. And, yeah, it's going to take us, you know, at least probably the next 2 to 5 years to actually get up to staffing levels. And we're the whole region's in sort of a police shortage crisis mode, to be honest with you.
Understand, sir. And hopefully my last question. Thank you again for all the answers and the time. This topic is, I guess, how many unauthorized people on the tracks have you seen, I guess, over the last year? And to the extent, you know, you catch any of the people, what happens to them?
Yeah, so we've had a number of them. I don't have the exact numbers. I could probably pull that information for you. So when we do, we actually catch a lot of them, and we lock them up for either trespassing in Virginia and Maryland, or we lock them up for unlawful entry in the district. Now, what the courts do with them, I don't control that.
Okay. And the reason why I ask, and maybe this is the national security background in me, is just, some of the conversations I've had is, I think the recommendation from at least some writers, it would be almost like a zero tolerance for something like that, because you never know what somebody's going to be doing on there. Because even though, say terrorism, obviously public transit, which you're well aware, is always a target. And even though terrorism is not in the news lately, it's one of those things that has a habit of showing up and being right in our face. So I think that the issue was spurred, the question was spurred, I think this is several months ago now, where people were doing TikToks or something on the
we see that quite a bit, social media. But yeah, I mean, we do have a zero tolerance for that, because not only for terrorism, but safety issue, and it causes a service delay as well. So, once we get you, we lock you up. Now, they could be released that day, that night, or whatever, because, for misdemeanors and all the jurisdictions, they don't hold people for those things.
Okay, I appreciate it. I will be done asking questions, at least for the time being. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir.
Chief, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, George.
So one thing I would like to point out, though, is I think everybody is aware that our ability to enforce fare evasion in the District of Columbia just came back online in November. So we went a few years without that. So I think people got really accustomed to not paying the fare. So it's something that we worked very hard with Mr. Clark and the executive leaders here to bring that back online in November. And we have seen a difference, since we brought it back online. But, it's going to take a little bit of work to get it back to where it was in 2017 and 2018. We were very focused on fare evasion, and what we saw is a decrease. And one of the things we said, a lot of incidents that happen within the system start with people that fare evade. So when we were addressing that, aggressively, we saw the results of that. Losing that ability for a few years, it's going to take a little bit for us to get that back. But that tool that was returned to us in November, by Mr. Clark and his team, I think we have seen some positive improvement since that time.
One last question, I'm sorry, that writers brought up a lot, and some of their recommendations were, do the officers, when they're dealing with fare evasion or the smoking issues or anything, do they have body cameras and kind of an SOP and how to hopefully de-escalate?
So yeah, we do a lot of training on de-escalation. We do not have body cameras currently, but we should be rolling out the first body cameras in April, and we believe we'll have full complement of body cameras rolled out by summer. That's something else that we work really hard on with the executive leaders here at WMATA to get. So, but what we do have is a very elaborate camera system within the Metro. So I'm not going to say never, but it's rare that we don't have these interactions on camera. There are times when we don't, but the uses of force that our officers do with fare evasion and other incidents is very low. I want to say under 1% with our encounters with people. So we do work with people quite a bit. And one thing I will say that I didn't mention earlier is we do offer ride-alongs. So if anybody wants to come out and see what our officers do and see what that fare enforcement looks like, be more than happy to set that up. And that could be any shift, any day of the week. We love to have folk come out and really see what our officers do.
I see Jose has his hand up.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Just to follow up on Mike's comments and questions to the chief, and I want to thank the chief and the rest of WMATA leadership. That I parked my car at Greenbelt, and over the past couple of weeks, I've seen that the Greenbelt officers are there stationed right in front of the station. Which, when I saw that, I was like, "Wow, this is great." So I appreciate that partnership with them, and then also to Mike. I know I was just had a casual conversation with Randy, and I believe Brian was on with us that day on the bus, and we were talking about the text line. And I think in the past there used to be the signage at the top where the announcements are. But in discussion with Randy, I brought up the idea that maybe we should put them behind each seat, so it's at eye level. It could be a scan code or something like that, but something that's more right there, that they don't have to be looking up, whatever. They can kind of just do a casual just to report something, so they're not putting themselves in danger. Just wanted to point that out. But
Yeah, and one thing I'll touch on too is our media relations department did a real push on getting that information out, the My MTPD text line. And we saw an increase when they did that. So we do know that the message is getting out, and it's ideas like that will help, because you're exactly right. Not everybody is comfortable, or not everybody's in a position to be able to call us when they need to. And the text tip line is a great tool. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, Jose, I want to interject one thing. Sorry if there's background noise, folks. We're working with comms right now to do some of that very thing. So I don't have a timeline for you at the moment, but we're actually discussing it today. So I would guess in the next couple of weeks, you'll see improved signage and some URL code. So that may have been your brainchild. So if it was, congratulations, we're doing it.
I wish I could do the clap thing here like Ms. Burnside did earlier, but thank you.
No, that's comforting to hear, and I think something that I don't want to speak on behalf of the RAC, but I think a positive development that we would like to see within the Metro Bus and Metro Rail Metro Access system is that easy access to that communication information, particularly the texting number.
Stay tuned, Brian.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Let's see. Any other questions or comments? Jose, Emma, Mahalia, Phil? Let's see. Oh, Jose. Okay.
I was just saying no comment.
Okay. And Bill or Pat? Okay. Thank you so much.
Good, Brian. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Assistant Chief Nadir and Chief Inzala. We greatly appreciate you all coming to speak to us. We will follow up, because I think the idea of a ride-along is something we would be interested in, not only because we would love to get kind of that increased exposure to the work that you all are doing, but it helps us make more informed recommendations to the board of directors and provide kind of more customer and rider-centered feedback to you all when we do that. But we greatly appreciate the programmatic and the quantitative information that you've provided to us about public safety. I know that's something that the rest of the RAC, and specifically Mike and the annual report committee, is going to be able to incorporate into their work. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate the support.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night.
Yes, you too.
And we will probably, during new business or later on in the meetings, try to synthesize some of that information to try to create some board recommendations to account for what we just heard. So we will revisit this public safety conversation after some of our other information has been presented, which brings us to our next agenda item. Lynn, thank you so much for hanging on. I know it's been a lot of information, a long meeting, but we're really looking forward to hearing from you about the 8K rail car update. So I will hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. And I just want to thank everybody for staying with the meeting until we got to this agenda item. I am really excited about having the opportunity to talk with you all today, because I'm in a new role. After 12 years with WMATA as at various times the head of communications and customer service, I'm now working on an effort that we call Rail Transformation. And this is one where I get to work with the chiefs of operations and the chief of infrastructure to support their efforts to build the fleet of the future. for WMATA. And so we're coming to you today for the first time, but it will be the first of many times to talk to you about 8000 series rail fleet design. And I want to just pause and say that I learned today that the AAC, with whom I'm visiting next week, has an entire design manual. So I'm with recommendations about what should be in the rolling stock. So Pat and Phil, I know you're on, and I want you to know I'm going to catch up to you. I'm going to catch up to where you are eventually. But tonight I just want to start with a couple of slides, and I want to show you some concepts that we're thinking about, get your gut reactions to these concepts, and then talk with the council about how best to get customer-centered input into the design process as we begin the steps towards building the 8000 series car. And basically our role will be to give the customer input into the design as Hitachi finalizes it for the next fleet. So with that, John, can you share those couple of slides for me?
Yes, let me pull them up here.
Thank you.
Let me. Oh, I'm sorry, they went hiding on me. Give me just.
There they are.
There
so
we
you can
go.
You can go right to slide
Right
2.
to slide 2.
So again, I want to stress, since you're seeing this for the first time, that this is a concept. It is not an advanced design. It's merely a concept. But for those of you who have ridden on open gangway trains, you know that they have this articulated middle, usually, something that connects the cars together so that there's no barrier to walking between cars. And that's what's illustrated here. Generally, this is something that is common in Europe and in Asia today. The Toronto system has it. New York City just got its first pilot car for its new fleet series, and it has the open gangway. And MARTA in Atlanta is designing an open gangway train set. The benefits of open gangway are that it's generally considered safer, especially for walking between cars. As you can see, you get a better line of sight without that barrier. You can see where there might be more capacity in a car. It's easier for wheelchairs to navigate, for walkers, for strollers, for people with luggage, for people who may be going to and from the train with bicycles and that kind of thing. So it creates a lot of flexibility for customers. I think if you go to the next slide, you will see the exterior, just so you can get a sense, right? So this is where the two cars are connected, and you can see that the customer can walk between the cars without being exposed to the exterior elements. The other thing that open gangway designs do is they give you, and I'm sorry, John, if you can go back to the prior slide, the interior slide. The other way that the open gangway does, the other thing that it does is it gives you an opportunity to rethink seat configuration. And one of the questions for the council this evening is whether or not seat configuration should be similar to what we have in the 7Ks, or whether we should think about how to accommodate people differently with this open gangway configuration, should we go down that path. So let me stop talking and pose the questions that I have for you today, which are 3. 1, do you favor the open gangway concept as something we should continue to explore? 2, do you think the seating configuration should be more subway-like, that is side seats, and less commuter-like, which is the double-facing seats that you see in the 7K today, or some combination? And 3, what do you think are the best ways for us to collect customer insights and input as we move forward with 8K designs? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you so much for sharing this kind of initial concept design. I will open it up to members to answer those questions. Feel free just to raise your hand. Emma says, love the gangway idea. Big fan of seats that face inward, especially since we know DC is a single seat city where people don't like to share. That's really interesting. Yeah. Pat?
So it's interesting. This has been raised on the AAC for the last 2-3 years, I'd say. But I'm concerned about the way the cars would be constructed, and how do you connect open gangway cars to the fleet that, let's say, it's more closed. I'm not sure. Is that possible? What does that do to the 8-car trains that are already being built? And I guess if we're under contract, how do you put in a whole new different design for rail cars if you've already signed a contract to do on the 8000 series? I'm a little confused. It seems quite a departure from what we had.
So I can answer some of those questions, Pat, not all of them, but there is room in the current contract to do some design changes. And so that's one of the reasons why we're exploring this, because we're at the stage where we would have to do that now before the car shells are built.
Right. Okay.
Okay. How you connect these is something that I can't explain mechanically. I don't know if Mr. Dwyer's still on. He may be able to do a better job than I of that.
Lynn, I don't know if I can do a better job, just from some familiarity with Toronto and discussions with NYCTA and MATA. Pat, we're not pairing these up with the current 7Ks. You realize that, correct?
Right. This should be paired up with the 8Ks, right?
Yeah. So, Pat, if we had kind of a married pair, they have some sort of coupling that is undertaken, but it's different than the traditional one we would use, and that's what you see in place there. So there's a variety of different manners by which you can have those coupled together. Some of them are bolt-on, some of them are kind of soft cover, some of them are hard cover. I don't think we've got to a maturity process on this that we could really fill you in on that. But this is industry standard in Europe, and obviously it started to come to the States. We're very comfortable about the fact that the kind of subject matter expert engineer we use for the 8K procurement works in New York, works in Toronto, works in MATA. So they have really great advice for us on how best to do this as we move forward, if we choose to do that at all.
Okay, and then I guess my last question is, with sort of the bends that we have in the tracks and that sort of thing, are these cars that are coupled together on the open gangways, I guess they would have the flexibility to make those turns or adjust.
Yeah, Pat, you'd have to factor that all into the design standards. There's been modeling done by Hitachi on our system, so that would all have to be factored into the vehicle design.
Great. Well, that's way above my pay grade, but I know those are questions that will be coming up. Yeah, that's great.
Of course, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you, ma'am, for explaining all that. It's you did a really good job of explaining kind of what the vision is and kind of the choices for that. I have a couple of questions on there and more of a comment. One of the, I guess, prevailing views that people I've spoken to as we're gathering information for other things for our annual report, and my own personal anecdotal evidence is that the quote that somebody told me was from a writer: "Nothing good ever comes out of someone moving between the trains." Because I know we've seen people going through the cars, and like shooting up heroin or harassing customers and moving throughout, the trains. There'd be panhandling, which, sometimes there'd be more aggressive panhandling. I say the other day, someone went through, was, I would say, sexually harassing people as you kept moving by. So that's just more of a comment to see if, if that's a consideration, in this thought process, although again, I do understand the logic for this. The questions I have are, how many seats do you anticipate losing if we go through more of the subway style, where it's just kind of on the end facing inward? And is there an additional expense if the design is changed from kind of whatever the original concept was for the 8000s to the open gangway? Thank you.
Sure. So let me take that first question. As somebody who formerly served in operations at Amtrak, I can tell you when we introduced Acela, one of the things that was a real advantage to that train was the ability to walk through without any break. And if you've ever ridden on Acela, and now they're designing the next generation of Acela, but if you've ever ridden on Acela, you know that that helps preserve temperature control, and it keeps the weather out, and it has a much better ability to manage luggage and so forth. And so it does work for people who take that train for commuter reasons, for people who take that train for longer distance trips. And so I can tell you that the overwhelming experience has been good. As Brian said, Toronto, Asia, Europe, transit properties use these it's a common practice, and don't find that experience that you have a concern about. Rather, the line of sight between cars is used to adjust so that people have room, and see where there's more room, more capacity, they may move down a car. With respect to the price, we don't know yet what, if any, additional costs there might be to this, because there's so many puts and takes in the design of a rail car that until you get to the final design, we can't give you that precise estimate. But you know, that's part of this process, is learning what the customers want, understanding what those inputs are, working with Hitachi to come up with the best possible design that reduces customer pain points and advances the features that you most want, future-proof it to the extent that we can, and then we'll see where we are. I'll give you a couple examples, and these will be coming back in some of the design concepts that we work with you on. You know, we're debating, there are phone chargers in these cars that are planned, but we're debating whether that's the good old-fashioned 110, 120 volts, or if that's the USB charger, if that's the wireless charger that I have on my iPhone 14. What will we want to use to charge in 20 years? Those are the kinds of decisions we'll need the customer's input on. There's things that the industrial designers and engineers will have opinions about, and then ultimately we'll have to cost them.
Thank you. I just, you mentioned all of those kind of bells and whistles and things, and I know one of the things that I anticipate being in our report is that 60% of the people we spoke to, their biggest concern is the long-term health of the system. And I mean, I think if you talk to people, and I know you do, is that the main thing is that the trains run on time, are they frequent, and they get from point A to point B. You start adding in, these other things that could break, they could become obsolete, could have expenses, unintended consequences. I think it's just something to consider. But I'm with you with a lot of this stuff. I know I would love to sit in a metro seat, on the outside, and not have to pick up the signal of the person next to me when they pick up their purse, like they're ready to go, to know that I got to get up and move. So I mean, things like that would certainly be helpful. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Jose.
Yeah, to answer your questions that you posed for the Writers Advisory Council, I think the gangway should be kind of explored a little bit more. I know that this is just a concept, and these things can evolve throughout the process, but I'm happy that you're showing this to us to react to. On the configuration side, I do think facing inward would be much more preferred. Just easier access to get in and out. Mike just mentioned, don't have to get the whole person right next to you to step up, and you're trying to get out on time. Sometimes I know I usually just try to get up like 2 stops ahead, because I really don't want to make people inconvenienced in some ways. And then I don't know how to answer your third question about best ways for other folks to get input. I would, since you guys are referencing examples of, like Toronto, Asia, and Europe, I'd be interested to hear like what other, community members that use the system that's come from other places than the US have. Maybe they have some mixed reactions about it. I don't know what they are, but I think this is all positive, and I do appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us tonight.
Thank you.
Mahalia.
Thank you for sharing this concept, Lynn. And I will answer your question, Jose. As someone who grew up in Asia, all I can say is finally we're getting open gangways. It is so much easier to get in and out. It's so much quicker. I believe the trains are also a lot lighter without those connectors. I don't know if that has an impact on the energy it uses up, but yeah, it is so much more efficient from my experience using them growing up. So I'm very excited. I can see some pushback just because it is a new concept here, and it is going to be a little weird seeing them on our rails because it's new. But I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Phil?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Phil.
From an accessibility viewpoint, and we'll talk to you when you come to us on Monday, but the sideways seat, the subway seat, and I grew up on those in New York, orthopedically, it's much safer to have the front-facing seat or back-facing seat for whiplash, people with bad backs, people with all sorts of spinal problems. So orthopedically, the mix has worked really well in the current system. The other problem I see in the mock-up is there are no hand grabs. And so for older people and for people that have muscular difficulties, from MS to Parkinson's to whatever, there's no way to get up from those seats. There are no handles, there are no arms. And I know in some of them where they do put arms between a couple of the seats, it's really difficult to judge because of the widening of the population, how far apart they should be and how they get up. So again, we'll spend a lot more time with you on that on Monday. The other thing that has been told to us by the previous administration is if one car goes down on a gangway series, the entire train gets shut down. They can't uncouple in the side and keep going on. So they have to pull the entire 8-car train or 6-car train out of service if one car goes out.
So I think that's one of the reasons why you look at whether you have the, as Brian said, the married pair, if you have quads, so that you don't have the condition that you have with 7Ks where you have 2 quads together that you don't want to uncouple.
Right. So if they can do that, that's super. And again, as I found in New York, bad things happen when you've got open gangways, particularly if there's a fire in one car, because the smoke then goes throughout the train. So anyway, thank you. And I'll get to talk more at the AAC with Pat. They're beautiful, and I like them.
Thank you, Dr. Posner. I appreciate you always.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for kind of stepping up and answering some of those questions. I will answer those, but I also have a few other questions as well. So pertaining to the open gangway, obviously pros and cons. I think some of those cons are very valid, and certainly making sure that if something happens in one train section, that we could decouple it without exacerbating and delaying the entire system. But I do see this as kind of potentially enhancing safety as as it pertains to if you're in an uncomfortable situation, you're around someone you don't want to be around. In the past, you've either had to go in between, right, opening the doors, or you've had to wait till you get to the next station to do so. Whereas this kind of makes it a little bit more socially acceptable and probably psychologically a little bit more likely to take that step to walk to the other train where there may be riders there. So in that sense, I think I see that as a plus. In terms of the seating, Lynn, the question's not, are we transitioning to 100% inwards facing, right? Or that there would still be seats going forward and back, right?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, and again, we're at the concept stage, so I'm taking your concerns and your advice and your insights into consideration. We don't have a final seating configuration, so it would probably be a mix.
Yeah, I think, obviously the ratio of forward facing or backward facing seats compared to inward facing is something, we could debate over percentages over, but I do think it's still important for some of the reasons that Phil mentioned to have a sufficient number of forward and backward facing, not only just from an accessible standpoint, but I just think generally accelerating and deaccelerating when you're facing in the direction of the way that the train is moving or moving away from is a little bit more pleasant than kind of moving side to side. And I think also people that tend to bring some more stuff onto the train, so whether that be luggage or groceries or things of that nature, I think it's important for them to have seating that again is forward and back, not so much side to side. But I agree. I do like the fact that there is side to side seating, and it makes it certainly easier to move about the train. So as long as there's a healthy mix between those two seating types, I think is what's important.
Okay, thank you. And I, as somebody who rides the trains from Shady Grove to L'Enfant these days, I'm on it for a while each trip. And I know many of my fellow riders don't like to ride backwards.
Right, yeah, true.
It's like it gives some people get motion sickness. So I am sensitive to your comment and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I do that whenever I get on the train. I'll sit backwards if I have to, if there's no other seats available, but I certainly prefer to sit forward again. Okay. Are there any other additional comments, questions, or answers? Bill? Okay. Hearing none. Lynn, is there anything else? Any parting comments you'd like to make?
No, I'd like to reserve time if the council will have me to come back as we go through this process to check in with you and share other concepts and ideas as we move forward.
Most definitely. We'd love to have you back. I think this is exciting, when the new series rail car comes out. It's an exciting time for the system, and it helps create a diversified rolling stock. And so, and that's very important. So we're looking forward to having you again when the time is right and when some of these plans are a little bit more further solidified. So
thank you again.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Okay. We will now transition to our next agenda item. John, I believe I will kick it over to you for FY24 budget hearings, outreach, and participation.
Yes. All right. So we're having budget hearings next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then virtual only on Friday. When I sent out the meeting invite on Friday, I included or separate, I can't remember, or separately, I included a link to a doodle poll to see if people wanted to be part of the open houses that we are having prior to those, at least the 3 in-person hearings, both sort of as a way to be on the ground floor of listening to what people have to say, as well as to maybe generate a little bit of buzz or awareness about the RAC, and possibly drum up some applications. So as of, I think right now I have 2 responses to the doodle poll as of this evening. So if that is something, and I understand that it may be difficult with work schedules, and this is a volunteer gig for everyone, it may be difficult for you all to attend the open houses because they do start at 5 o'clock. But if that's something that you all are interested in, the plan would be to sort of set you up with a little table with a little bit, with some, I almost envision it looking like, Lucy Van Pelt and her, the doctor is in little table. So, again, if you guys are interested and want to have a presence at any of the hearings, just let me know, and we'll make sure that all you have to do is walk in and chat with people, in terms of, name tags and additional, any kind of information that you might want to hand out.
And Mike, I believe, sorry, I admittedly just submitted the doodle poll as you were talking.
So we're up to 3.
We're up to 3. And we have a RAC member that is available, I believe, for each jurisdiction, right? So it's DC on the 6th, Maryland on the 7th, Virginia on the 8th.
I have, I have been paying attention to the meeting, and I have not opened the poll, so.
So I think that's really great that we're able to have someone represented at each meeting. And so if you have not filled out that doodle poll, please go to that email that John sent out and complete it if you're able to do so. John, presumably you would like that by the end of the week.
Yes, just so we can have name tags, and I can, get you all information. Again, understanding that these things start at 5 o'clock, so I know it's not the easiest to make it. The hearings will be broadcast on YouTube. So if you're interested in just watching, if your schedule permits to watch the hearing, just to sort of hear what people are coming out and saying. We don't have a ton of people signed up yet for the hearings, but we also we just don't know what to expect. This is sort of our first post-pandemic round of public hearings, and it's definitely the first time since well before the pandemic that we have had such sort of major proposals on the table, both in terms of fares and rail service. So I will look forward to sort of getting you all a summary report of both the hearings and all the other information that we've heard as part of our outreach next month, when you sort of make your deliberations and recommendations to the board on the budget. But we welcome anybody coming out next week.
And everyone gets a cool name badge that you get to keep as a souvenir.
There you go.
At no charge.
There you go. And we may,
That's cool.
I will have to talk to Jose about this, but you may even get a box dinner. Free sandwich.
If you stay for the duration.
If that sweetens the pot.
But only if you stay for the duration.
You get the dinner at the end. Nice.
There you go.
Correct.
But it's a very easy way to reach out to people who are obviously there to be engaged and that are interested in Metro. So it's like shooting fish in a barrel, or catching fish in a barrel, or something nonviolent with fish in a barrel.
And John, if I understand correctly, there's one in Virginia, one in Maryland, and one in DC. So, members that are in you could go to the one in your jurisdiction.
Yes. Monday night in DC here at our headquarters building at LaFont. Tuesday night at our New Carrollton offices, which are literally right outside the entrance to the New Carrollton Metro Rail Station. Wednesday night in Virginia, near the West Falls Church Metro Rail Station. We will be providing a shuttle van, since it's not a bad walk, but there's some construction, so it's not a great walk. But they're all transit accessible. They're all, in nice facilities. We're going to have Metro staff there explaining concepts. So if there's stuff that you don't understand about the budget or want to learn more about, talk to people, all that good stuff.
Okay. And I think what we'll also want to make sure that the feedback that you receive and you get back at those meetings are information that we can incorporate in either for the March board meeting, or maybe even John, if it's okay with Matt, the finance and capital in April meeting. That would be the first crack at approving the budget, right?
Yes.
Sorry, Director Letourneau.
Matt's fine. Yes. So, depending on what you, the information you hear and collect, coupled with, hopefully I'll be able to get you some of the other inputs, because while the public hearings are important, I think we get, and if Lynn's still on, she can correct me, but I want to say we get less than 5% of our universe of responses come at the public hearing. That we go out and we meet people where they are and talk to them and do outreach at stations. And I'm sure you all have seen the folks in the yellow vests. So we'll try and get you a little bit of information on what we heard outside of the public hearings as well, to help inform your recommendations.
So John, I would just add to that, the best thing to review is the survey responses. That's probably the most consolidated universe of feedback that we get, and that's where the lion's share of the comment comes. So if you just wanted one thing, I would review the survey responses.
Awesome. That's right. Yeah, because is it the middle of the month that the survey responses are due? I forget.
The comment period closes on March the 15th. The Ides of March.
So then what would be the mechanism for the RAC to get that data in advance of their deliberation?
Well, I'm trying to think of what the schedule is. You have a March 1st meeting, and then you have when's your April meeting? I'm sorry.
The 5th, the 7th, the 5th.
So John, you would have to, so I think the information, Brian, is coming to the board April 13th. That's when you see the staff report. Yes. And so we could see, John, we'd have to circle back and see whether there'll be some preliminary survey results available on the 5th that the RAC could be briefed on. I would hope so, Brian, because the materials are usually assembled for the board about a week in advance. So I'm hoping that schedule will work.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Lynn.
Yeah.
No problem.
Go ahead, fill out the doodle if you're able to attend the open houses next week. And once we get that plus other data, that'll help us make recommendations for the kind of April approval period for the FY24 budget. Are there any comments or questions about that? Okay. We will move on to our next agenda item, Mike and the Annual Report Committee.
Thanks, Brian. So I think I have what I need now to kind of put together a draft annual report. So my plan is over the next few weeks is to come up with a draft. I will circulate it to members of the Annual Report Committee. I'll CC Brian as well as John and Bryna, and give everybody an opportunity to review it, provide edits, feedback, rip it up, and tell me to redo it. You know, we'll have a mechanism for that. And then once the report is kind of goes through that process, then we'll send it to the full RAC for just for review, then ultimately approval. There is going to be a section, because how I've kind of the template I've created is going to have including kind of rider proposals to resolve their solutions. So what I envision is, you know, some of these proposals are just going to be here's what the riders had kind of told us, and then if the RAC wants to endorse any of those solutions, then we can make it known that those are RAC endorsed proposed solutions from the riders. I think my initial intent was to try to time this to get the RAC's budget recommendations in the report. I don't think that's feasible for this first go around, but I think it's something that we can kind of time for that. If we do this again, the next one we'll time it so we can maybe include the budget recommendations moving forward. And any questions for me?
Mike, thanks for your work and everyone else's contributions.
Thank you. And Patrick, I did get your information, so I'm definitely going to incorporate that into the report as well. So thank you.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That is good work and good questions tonight on that safety briefing. You had very good insights.
Okay. We'll now transition to our next agenda item, which is new business and announcements. I have two. The first act of new business is I think it would be important for us as a group to consolidate some of the ideas and maybe even recommendations that we've made over the course of this meeting to be able to present to the board at their board of directors meeting later this month. So for March 2023, they're meeting on the 23rd. And so this will just help John when myself and the exec board kind of create and finalize the board report. We're doing so with as much buy-in from the RAC members as possible. So I think that there are a couple, I know as it pertains to the public safety conversation, that I think it seems that the RAC has kind of agreed upon, namely the increased exposure and communication around particular, like the safety line, the texting line, and things of that nature. And I know they're already working on that, but I think reinforcing that as being a priority is an important one. I'll offer that up as a recommendation we make in front of the board. And are there any other recommendations that you all think would be useful to incorporate in our board report?
Brian, this is Pat, and I think Michael, you brought this up by asking the question. I think the body cameras are a good one, and the fact that will be starting, I think he said April 1st and completed by September, I think the dates were. I know it's going to cost money, but I think that that's a good thing to do, to have, even though, as you said, there's a lot of cameras around, but still, I think that's good to have. So I don't know if the rest of the RAC agrees with that position, but I think it's important.
I'd agree. Mike?
Yeah, I would say, thanks, Pat. For the body cameras, I mean, I think the cameras they're talking about, I think, are silent. So I think if you want context for an interaction between a police officer and an individual in the system, I think the body camera is definitely far superior to kind of the overhead surveillance cameras. I think that if we're going to rely on surveillance cameras, I think that the disservice for kind of investigating the entire incident, because there's no context to it. And it's just, I agree with Pat. I think the body camera should definitely be a priority. And, when they were talking about enforcing kind of the smoking and even the statistics that the police, transit police mentioned regarding fare evasion, a lot of that was news to me. And I think it'd be news. I think like the statistics and where they've been and the stations they've been at. I think that it should. This is my opinion. I think that this should be something the statistics should be put out there in a really public manner to acknowledge to all of these issues, because again, these are issues that the riders have really keyed in on, and the board at least for that. Yeah.
And I think, Mike, not to interrupt you, but I think that transition us to a good point, which is, should the public safety metrics, of which we still don't know which ones are probably the best or how they exactly measure them, should those be included in the customer dashboard?
Yeah.
Because I know that's something that, we kind of mentioned ever so briefly when Jordan was on the line. Sorry, Jordan. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we can say. Sorry. Go ahead, Brian. I didn't mean to.
Oh no, I was just going to see what everyone else thought about that.
I'll stop talking. To say that, I think safety is obviously a big issue, and people are going to want to know those metrics as they plan their commutes. And it's like anything else. So I think that's vital. I think that's vital information, to be honest, good or bad. And I think people have a right to know about that. And I think it does a service to them. And yeah.
My sense is, this is Pat again. My sense is that it could take a little bit of time to get the metrics into a dashboard. I think that would be good. I think that particularly goals, or the target as they would call it, what is the target going to be on some of these things might be something they would want to discuss, so that they had something they might be able to meet or measure, or the impact would be appropriate. But I'll just, I've sat through a lot of briefings over the last years when I've done this, and this was, I agree with you, Mike and Brian, one of the most comprehensive that I've heard. They covered so many topics, and they had not only covered the topics and the statistics, but they had solutions. And so, this is something I think that I would like the AAC to just even view this briefing, because they really were quite thorough with what they had to say and recommend.
Thank you so much, Jose.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, not so much on the metrics, but also what they're already doing as far as getting they already have the 4 crisis clinicians to help those that need the help that are using our system, and trying to bring 6 more. I know hiring in general nationwide is always a challenge, but I do appreciate the briefing, especially being very upfront and forward, and trying to try to de-escalate as much as possible, because it is helpful, just from trying to use the system, more and more, just making sure that people are getting the assistance that they need. So I think that is important.
Any other comments? Okay. Oh yes, John.
Sorry, I did an old school raise my hand. This is helpful, and I can just say that with the way that the month lays out, we have a good 3 weeks until the board meeting, so I can take your comments and work them into a draft, and hopefully we can maybe circulate it. Last month we pushed our meeting back, and some other things were going on, so hopefully this month, with this with you guys giving me a head start, I'll be able to circulate something to the whole team.
And this
So that
is
you can see
good.
it.
So yeah, and thank you so much. I agree. I think we have plenty of time as it pertains to public safety, incorporating those metrics into the customer dashboard and just actually generally flushing out what those metrics should be and look like, as well as work on kind of the advertising and making that public safety information more widely available to individuals engaging with their system on the bus and rail and stuff like that. Are there any other recommendations? I know a lot of the information presented to us today was also informational in nature, but. Hearing none, I will move into our next agenda item in open business, really announcements, and that is just letting you know that per our bylaws, we are having elections next month for our exec board positions. Per our bylaws, we have a RAC chair and 2 vice chairs, so 3 members that we must elect. They need to come from different jurisdictions. So 1 from Virginia, 1 from DC, 1 from Maryland. If you are an at-large member, but you reside in one of those jurisdictions, then you can represent those jurisdictions on the RAC as either chair or vice chair. So for example, I am a representative from Virginia. I was appointed as a Virginia representative. But if we have an at-large member, Mike, are you at-large, I think? But you live in Virginia, then you can still serve as, a vice chair or a chair. We need to elect all 3 positions, and I don't know so much an announcement. I don't want you all to be caught off guard by this, but I've thought about it, and I've decided that I will not be running for a chair or vice chair position in this kind of newly exec board. I've been chair almost for 2 years, maybe 20 months or so. I think it was late spring or summer of 2021 that I joined. And so do know that there will certainly be some shuffling that will exist as a result of that. And whether you would like to be chair or vice chair, all the elections are open in that regard. But it's been a real honor and pleasure serving you all as chair. I'll continue my chair responsibilities through the rest of this month and into April as well, and also ensure an orderly transition for whomever decides to take on the mantle. If you have any questions or just general comments about what it's like to be chair, I would love to answer those for you. Similarly, I know for vice chair, we have Cole Mahalia. You all can really attest to what it's like in your particular roles and the responsibilities that entails. But I just want to make you all know that is something at the end of our meeting in April, on April 5th, that we'll have to address. So, Bill.
Yeah, Brian, just a non-starter, but what we did, we went above and beyond and followed the board. And we kept the immediate past chair, which in our case was Patrick, in the leadership group for advice. And I would suggest it worked really well. It worked well for the board. So you might consider not going on vacation, but being available to help craft monthly reports and who to talk to, who to see. It's very valuable to have the immediate past chair available. Thank you.
I agree. Maybe I'll take a little vacation, but I agree. I think I will remain a member of the RAC. My term was extended to December 2024. So I am not going anywhere. I will be on this for at least another 2 years. So, and I'm looking forward to ensuring a transition in that regard.
Well said.
But a little vacation, just a little tiny bit. Are there any other questions or comments about what I just said?
Just that I appreciate, this is Pat, Brian, I appreciate your leadership. You've really done credit to the RAC. And you've done a real nice job with how you presented the RAC and the agendas month to month. You've been extremely good. So I'm sorry that you're not going to run, but good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat. I greatly appreciate it. And I think even though I may not be chair, I will still make it a point to come to the board of directors meetings on a monthly basis to catch up with you.
Yeah, great. I'll be there. Thanks.
Okay. Well, that is all I have. Are there any other announcements for the group? We'll open the floor. Brian.
Thank you. Hey, thanks to Brian. We're gonna have to celebrate that one. You've just been amazing, and I do hope that everyone will consider, really considering a position. We also have vacancies, and John, I think you're going to give us an update about the timing and application submissions, and when those will be available. You're muted.
Thank you. It had to happen to at least one person, the meeting, so glad it could be me. Yes, so I've gone through the applications that we have on file. I would like to beat the bushes to get a few more. We have 3 vacancies and 1 member who hasn't been with us for a while, so I think we can consider that a vacancy. What I'm hoping that those of you that are at the budget open houses will be able to do, and I can give you materials to do this, is direct people to the online application, so that we can get a group of, ideally get a group of folks to sort of a top tier to interview the week of March 13th. So, have people fill out the online application sort of on the spot, or, tell them, hey, do this by the time by the end of the week, by the 10th. If you do encounter people or talk to people at the budget hearings, and then do interviews the week of the 13th and possibly the very first, the 20th and 21st, and get the board to take action to fill those other positions on the 23rd, so that you'll have a full range of people in April.
And this is a natural transition, you guys. I mean, this happens every 2 years. I think there's a cycle. Is that right? So, so we're strong. Strong RAC. You all are engaged and doing great work. And now, we need to fill these, and it will even be stronger. So, thanks in advance to everyone for, identifying people that you think would be good candidates. And so thank you. So I had 2 other things. Really quick, I know it's late, but one is John's hopefully will be following up with some dates for doing one of those great tours that Brian keeps offering and Randy keeps offering. So look for that. And then I just want to end with I got Brian, if I can just indulge you guys for 3 seconds. It's the 50th anniversary of Metrobus. I hope everyone's celebrating. And I got to spend about an hour at the bus bay in Arlington today, celebrating. And I just wanted to. I'm not going to be able to share my screen. But John,
hold on. I can share. Let me just find the link with your photos.
I just wanted to show you guys a couple of the energy of the bus drivers, and that one of the things we did talk about is maybe even just going to one of the bus bays and sitting down with some bus employees or rail employees, you can just kind of see, if you just click one of those, John, and then you just click to the right really quick, just click on one of those pictures, or you guys can just see them.
There we go.
And just click the arrow to the right really quick. You just see the energy in the room. They also had 48 new candidates that are in training at this session. It was the largest birthday party to date. And so there's just really good energy. And I think, these folks are working just really, really hard. And so I just wanted to celebrate with you guys on the 50th anniversary. That was us singing happy birthday. So anyways, and then one more. So.
Here we go. We'll end on that one.
So thanks, guys.
Oh, that looks super nice. And I know that it was also a very touching celebration at the board of directors meeting last week about that. I did not know. It's not that I shouldn't have expected. It was just really cool to see the number of individuals that have been in the system for 25, 35, 45 years.
Yeah. A lot of them there today too.
Yeah. So that's really nice to hear. And, we love the Metro Bus, 50 years strong.
Oh, yay. Mahila, that's great. So anyways, happy birthday, Metro Bus.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be looking for candidates.
Yes,
Thanks,
that's
Brian.
kind of our
I put the
next.
application in
Brian
the
a big
chat.
round of
So,
applause.
Thank you.
Chair Farmwide, and even, these are public meetings, so even if people either don't feel like they can commit to joining or aren't ultimately selected, they're always welcome. So.
Well, thank you all so much. We certainly have a lot of work to do between filling some of these spots on the rack, our budget hearings, creating our recommendations, and getting ready for our April meeting. So let's keep the foot on the gas. And I thank you all so much for sticking around till 8:20 p.m. tonight. With that said, I'll move that we adjourn the meeting of the Riders Advisory Council. Is there a second?
Jose, second.
Jose said second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Awesome. We are now officially adjourned, and I will see you all and talk to you all soon. Bye.
Yep.